Morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We're learning Mishna Yishkolim, Parakeh, Chapter 5, Mishna Gimel, Mishna 3. Now, an introduction. It was stated in Mishna 1 that Yochanan was responsible for providing the tokens and Achia was responsible for providing the Sachim. Remember that? There was one man in charge of the tokens, one man in charge of the Sachim. So now we're going to explain what this means. So number one, the Sachim are brought to accompany Ola and Shlamim offerings. Ola we refer to as a burnt offering. Shlamim we call it sometimes a peace offering. And Ola is completely burnt. A Shlamim parts are burnt, parts the Kohanim eat, parts the owner eats. And so Nesachim, so every time you're bringing an Ola or a Shlamim, it comes along with Nesachim. And Nesachim means it comes along with a flour mixed with oil. Okay, that's one thing. Flour mixed with oil. That's going to be burnt on the mizbeach, on the altar. And wine that's poured on the altar. So every time you bring an ola or a shlamim, along with it, it's going to come nesachim, which includes a meal offering, mincha, and wine for pouring. The required amount of flour, oil, and wine varies according to the kind of animal offered as the ola or shlamim. As the Torah says. The Torah says, depending on which animal, that's how much flour and oil and wine you have to bring. And the Mishnah is going to go through that. A system was developed to allow people to buy these ingredients, let's call them, in the Beis HaMikdash. Why? So they explain here in the notes, because the flour, oil, and wine were offered on the Mizbeach, on the altar. Special safeguards had to be followed to protect them from tumah, from ritual impurity, even before they were designated as offerings. What this all exactly means, I'm not exactly sure, but the point is that being is going to be offered as a sacrifice. We have to take special precautionary measures. We have to follow, as I say, there were special safeguards to protect them from becoming pure. Okay, it was difficult for people to maintain these safeguards in their homes. For this reason, these items were made available in the Beis HaMikdash itself. Okay, so these things, you could purchase them in the Beis HaMikdash. So now, first, they would pay to Yochanan, who, as proof of payments, would give them a token that indicated how much flour, oil, and wine they had to pay, that they had paid for. We said Yochanan was in charge of the seals, of the tokens. So that means that they paid Yochanan, and then Yochanan provided them with they call it a token. You could call it wasn't a coin, it was a piece of paper. And on the piece of paper, it said what they had purchased, meaning what they needed. And it had his seal. That's why the word chosa means a seal. And his seal was on it. Okay? Now, then, so that was the first thing. Right. And then they would go ahead and present this token to Achia, who then saw what they purchased and give them what they needed. Okay, so this Mishnah teaches us the different tokens were used for this purpose, representing the various kinds of offerings. Okay, so here we go. Arba chaysamas hayaba mikdash. There were 4, again, we'll call them tokens, seals, in the Beis HaMikdash. V'chasav alein, and was written upon them these words: Ego, which means calf. Zachar means male. Gedi means a kid, goat. Chayte means sitter. Those were the 4 seals. Depending on what you needed, depending on what animal you were bringing, that's what you got. So let's explain each one, okay? The first one we said was egel, calf. Okay, that calf is cattle, cows, right? That's what a calf is. It's from the cow family. So that represented cattle or cow offerings. A cattle offering is accompanied by, now you have to keep this in mind, because this is why when you hear these, whether you'll remember all these different measurements and amounts, the point is that there are different amounts per animal, depending on the animal that you brought. Those were the different animals, which actually the Mishnah at the end is going, well, not exactly. Okay. So a cattle is accompanied by, the Torah says, 3 isaron of flour. Isaron is a dry measure, mixed with half a hin of oil. A hin which is a liquid measure, a liquid volume, consists of 12 lug. And therefore, if you're talking about a half a hin of oil, you're talking about 6 lug of oil, as well as half a hin of wine. That's the amount that's the amount of flour, oil, and wine that goes along with an animal that you're offering, as your carbon a calf. Okay. Now, just for our own conversion into amounts that we may understand, that we relate to, an isarin is a dry measure that is equal to the volume of 43.2 eggs. That's not small.
Got it.
A hin, look at this one. A hin is a liquid measure that equals to the volume of 72 eggs. Okay. Now, and we're saying that right, half a hin, right, is what a half a hin of oil is what they use. That's 36 eggs. Okay. Now, that's the first. The first one is egel, calf. Zachar literally means male, but actually it's a word being used for a ram. A ram in Aramaic is translated as dichra, and dichra also means male. So zachar meant a ram. If you're bringing a ram, what's a ram? Now, a ram does not mean, one of those big animals with the big curly horns. That's not what a ram necessarily means. A ram is a male sheep that is more than 1 year old. If it's already 1 year old, it's a ram. And what we call a seh, right? That's within its first year. It's a real baby. It's a real baby lamb. Okay. And once it gets into a year, it's called a ram. And again, you can bring now a ram is a male, and that can be brought from the calf. You have male and female calves. Happens to be that for an ola you can only bring a male, and for a shlama you can bring even a female. Okay, but a ram is a male sheep, so that's going to be that can be brought again either way. A ram is a male sheep that is more than 1 year old. A ram offering is accompanied by, ready, 2 isarin of flour. That's less than before. Mixed with 1/3 of a hin of oil, which is 4 lug, as well as 1/3 of a hin of wine. Now, this is, again, we're talking about male sheep over 1 year old. What about a male, I don't know if you call it a lamb, whatever you call it, a male sheep that's less than 1 year old? Where does that fall? What category does that fall into? That falls into the next category called gedi. Gedi means a kid goat. Okay, so whether we're talking about a kid goat, we're talking about which I believe. So what it is. Okay. Gedi is a kid goat. That represents if you bring a sacrifice from goats or a sheep offering, which either means female or a male under a year. There, what is it accompanied by? Is accompanied by 1 isarin mixed with 1/4 of a hin, which is 3 lug, as well as 1/4 of a hin of wine. That is gedi. And the next one is called chayte, sinner. Okay, what is that referring to? So that's referring to a person who is stricken with saras. Saras is a certain development of white spots on your different types of skin problems, depending on the sides and all the different details to it. If you have saras, you become impure. And when the saras goes away, you have to go through a purification process. So ordinarily, a person who's a saras brings 3 lambs. 3 lambs. One is an ola, one is an asham, one is a chatas. One is a burnt offering, one is called an asham, which we translate as a guilt offering, and one is a chatas, a sin offering. So that's 3, and it's 3 lambs. Okay? Not 3 calves, not 3 rams, 3 lambs. Each animal offering is accompanied by nesachim, right? Each animal is accompanied by the flour and the oil and the wine. Interestingly, they point out here, chatas and asham offerings are not usually accompanied by nesachim. However, the mitzvah offerings are an exception. That's an important thing to know. Typically, a chatas asham doesn't have nesachim. For a person who had saras and is becoming purified from it, they do bring nesachim. So that means they have 3 animals, and each animal needs its nesachim. Okay. Now, a gedi, the animal they have to bring, had to it one isarin mixed with 3 lug of oil. So now if I have 3 animals, right, that means I need 3 isarenas of flour and I need 9 lug of oil. Right? Is my math correct? Now, okay. In addition, a mitzvah requires an additional lug of oil, that's 1/12 of a hin, which is applied to his right ear, thumb, and toe. That's part of the process. In total, then, a mitzvah requires nesachim for 3 lambs, as well as an additional lug of oil. For this reason, he was given a special token that indicated his need for the combination of flour, oil, and wine. His is different. His is different than everybody else, right? And therefore, he got his own seal. Why was it called a sinner? Why did I call him a tzara? The answer is because typically if he gets saras, it means he did something wrong. So it's kind of another little wake-up call for him to realize that he did this for his sins. Okay, so these were the four tokens.
Was it just that he had it on his skin, or was it on his house? On
the house and does not make you tamei. The clothing does not make you tamei. I don't think it's talking about. I'm pretty sure it's. I don't think so. I think this is all talking about it was on your body.
Right. One other question: did you bring the calf, or did you had to purchase it at the base of Mikdash?
That's a good question. They don't mention that. They don't mention purchasing that at the base of Mikdash. They mention only the other stuff, not the animals. By the way, animals, as long as they're alive, don't become tamei.
I know.
So you don't really have to guard them from anything.
But it might be, have a mum or something.
So they have to be checked, but they didn't sell them there. You brought it. It would seem like they didn't sell it there. You brought it. You bought it.
But they must have had some there.
Could be, but the point is that the necessity for the flour and the oil in the base of Mikdash was to make sure that it stayed tamei, tar, and the animals don't need that.
Right.
Now, next. That's the first opinion. According to the first opinion, we have 4 of them. Next. Ben Azai says, Chamisha hayu. There were 5 tokens. Ba'arames kasav aleihen. And the words on them were not in Hebrew, but they were in Aramaic. Because Aramaic was the commonly spoken language. Believe it or not, there were Jews during that time who were not able to read Hebrew. Even though they're bringing the sacrifice and everything, they did not read Hebrew. And therefore, according to Ben Azai, you wanted them to be able to see what it said on the token so they could read it and see that they got the right one. You know, when you get your receipt, right? Some people check it to see is it correct. So basically, they wanted to know, they should be able to see, according to Ben Azai, to make sure that the person gave them that they were given the right token. And even though the Mishna is going to mention this in Hebrew words, these words were in Aramaic on the tokens. So again, you had egel, calf, zachar, ram, gedi, kid. Now, instead of just chote, sinner, there were 2 sinners. Chote dal, a poor sinner, v'chote usher, and a not poor, and a person and the sinner who can afford. That's really what it means. The question is affording and not affording. So this is what it means. A mitzaru cannot afford all 3 lambs. We said before that when the person with saras becomes pure, he's got to bring 3 lambs. And what if you can't afford 3 lambs? So the Torah gives you an option that when it comes, so the asham has to be from a lamb. That's one. And the lambs that we were supposed to bring for the olah chatas, you bring 2 birds in place. Birds are never accompanied by nesachim. Birds don't have nesachim. Therefore, Ben Azai teaches that there was 1 token for a poor mitzara who requires only the nesachim for a single lamb, which is 3 lug of oil, 3 lug of oil and wine, plus an additional lug of oil, because it has to be put on, because that was the oil that was put on his toe and ear and thumb. So he needed 4 lug of oil. So he got a token. He got his own token, a 4 lug of oil. And a separate token for a rich mitzvah requires an asachah for 3 lambs plus an additional lug of oil. You can afford all 3 lambs, but each lamb gets the asachim of a lamb. I mean, each one gets 3 lug, total of 9 lug to be offered on the mizbeach, and then 1 lug for the application on those parts of his body. Now, so then as I said, you get a separate token for each one. The Tanakama didn't hold that way. He said there's only one token. So the sages, however, say that a poor mitzvah was simply given the token marked kid, which entitled him to the nesachim for a single lamb. Meaning, that's what he brought. He brought one lamb, so you give him a token for like a person who's bringing one lamb. What about the hint of oil, the lug of oil that he needed for application on his body? He would bring the additional lug of oil from his home. That additional one he could bring from his home. Since this additional lug was not offered on the altar, but simply applied to his body, it was not essential for it to have been specially safeguarded from tumah. So therefore, basically, it seemed that it was more worthwhile, according to the Tanakama, to have less seals, even though that meant that he wasn't necessarily getting a look from the base. He wasn't getting the extra look from the base Hamikdash. He was bringing it from home, which I wonder, according to this, if that means that even the rich one, when it came to the extra lug of oil, he brought it himself, just like the poor man. But he still needed his own separate token because, again, his amounts were different than everybody else's. Okay, now the Mishnah concludes with telling us about the words that appear on each token, what exactly they are. What exactly do they represent? What are they used for? Ego, the calf. Mishamish is used im niskei bakar for the nesachim that go along with cattle. Gedailim uktanim, whether they are considered adult or they're considered children, which the Bartanur explains. Beilin ischei oilis she'enam bais el zacharim. Beilin ischei shlam shabayim zacharim eine kevais. Okay, that's really the next line. Sorry about that one. Just 1 second. Right, okay. So when it comes to the cattle, When it comes to the cattle, the nesachim for the cattle, gedolim miktanim, whether they were adult, whether they were young. Sachar menekevis, male or female. Male bird used only for the olos. Females can also be used for the shlamim. So that is what Egel represented. That represented the nesachim that went for cattle, whether they are adult or young, male or female. Gedi, the token that said Gedi, kid. Mishamash niskei tzayin gedolim uktanim. That is used for the nesachim of sheep, whether again adult or whether they are young. Zachar menekeves, male or female, chutz mishal elim, except if you're talking about a ram, right? That is the one exception. Sown ram are included in sown sheep also, but they are. But when we talk about the gedi representing sown sheep, it's all sheep excluding the rams. I mean, it's all goats and all sheep excluding the rams. Zachar, the token that said male, that was used for the nesachim for rams exclusively. That's all it was for the rams. Chayte, the token that said sinner, that was used for the nesachim of the 3 animals that the mitzvah who was going through his purification process had to bring. He had 3 behemoths. He had 3 calves that he was bringing. He had 3 animals. It doesn't say it's not bucker. 3 animals. Actually, he brought 3 what would be 3 kids is what he brought. 3 lambs, and that was what this token of chote was used for, to represent, to be able to allow him to purchase the nesachim, the wine, oil, and wine that went along with the 3 animals, the 3 lambs of the mitzvah. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
And a good Shabbos.
Mm-hmm.